Good afternoon. I just got done reading all the comments concerning fragmentation in education, which revolved largely around the fragmentation of marriage. But there were those of you who talked a little bit about the fragmentation in the curriculum and how to keep all of that together. I just want to maybe say a few things about the comments. I thought, first of all, the discussion was really great. Uh, you all, have engaged really well with the readings and are bringing your own personal experiences into the discussion posts, which I think is really beneficial for all of your fellow students because it helps us to get that other perspective, that different perspective about the question at hand. One of the things that I thought was really interesting as we went through all of the discussion was towards the end of the discussion thread. There were a couple of students, a couple of you that isolated that tension between providing for the human needs of the student, or maybe a better way to say it would be the social and emotional needs of the student versus providing for the intellectual needs of the student as defined through some of the readings that we did as part of this module, in that there seems to be a tension between satisfaction of both of those realities in terms of the Catholic school. And I think that's right on in sense of that if you don't have those basic needs met, it makes the outcome of the Catholic school in terms of intellectual formation that much more difficult to achieve. And it calls into question really the relevance or the unicity of the purpose of Catholic school education in terms of intellectual formation, which we saw Jacques Maritain in particular, as well as Newman, really emphasize that the intellectual life, the shaping of the mind, is the purpose for which Catholic schools exist. Catholic schools don't exist because Catholic families break down, right? So there's a real sense in which the purpose for Catholic schools is not to be a Catholic family. It's not to replace mom and dad. And yet, education itself in loco parentis recognizes a collaborative relationship and a co-relative relationship, a correlative relationship between the educational institution and the parents who are the primary educators of the faith, and primary educators in general. So kudos for drawing out or elucidating a little bit this tension which is felt, which is a real tension. It's not imaginary and it's not hypothetical. It's really there. So having said that, I want to just go through. I have some statements or just comments that I'd like to make on the different discussion threads that we had. So first of all, talking about orthodoxy in teaching about the family and some of the difficulties that you can easily have with regard to that, or complexities of that in a Catholic school context with a lot of fragmented families involved. Just to say, holding the line on issues of marriage and human sexuality is quite simple in terms of what to teach. The difficulty, however, is how to maintain that orthodox commitment without being hypocritical, perceived as judgmental or irrelevant to families whose experiences are not that of the Catholic ideal. In a certain way, I think this is what Pope Francis has been trying to wrestle with on a global level. It is one thing to teach the mortally sinful character of in vitro fertilization in the abstract. It is another to teach it while you have students in your class that you know, and perhaps they don't, were conceived through in vitro fertilization. The same goes for divorce and remarriage, so-called same-sex marriages, etc. So that's that prudential line, that line of discernment that is, I think, important. And Jessica Carruthers' post on shifting the parameters of classroom discussion around divorce to focus first on what is best and healthiest for children is a great example of pedagogical awareness. So kudos to you, Jessica, on that decision in your own classroom. I think it fits well within the line of thought held by virtue theory, which focuses on the good to be achieved rather than the limits allowable by human action. Shifting to another comment here, as Shannon Schmidt stated aptly, freedom of indifference is integral to the entire conversation about fragmentation of family. Without the conception of freedom of indifference as the good to be sought, you could not justify the clear path of emotional carnage left in the wake of individual liberty idolized. Pink Airs and John Paul II are important for us here as hermeneutical keys that unlock very many of the problems that we've been discussing in this course. Catholic schools and parishes, I think, need to foster a paradigmatic shift in the conception of freedom from that of indifference to that of that for which is for excellence. Pardon me. In order to do this, we need you. We need parents. We need a cohort of catechists and teachers and administrators to invest your blood, sweat, and tears into Catholic schools for the sake of the common good of the Church. It should be clear by now that what the Catholic school is and ought to be is unique. It is not the same category of public schools. This is just one anecdote amongst many in the course that demonstrates the importance of strong and dedicated Catholic school administrators, board members, and teachers. Without them, the vision of Catholic education cannot become real. So I think Shannon's comment about freedom of indifference is poignant. It's maybe not poignant, it's pertinent. And I think Pink Airs and John Paul II are important hermeneutical keys for us to unlock the problems that we're talking about by seeing that two conceptions of freedom are mutually exclusive, and unless we fix that conception, we're going to be kicking against the goad, so to speak. So thanks, Shannon, for your comment. Mike Hagstrom's statement, Catholic schools have historically heeded the call to serve those in need, to see Christ in the least, and the poverty of fractured families and cheated children is one of the great poverties of our time, is poignant. It harkens back to Mother Teresa's statement about the poverty of the United States in her Nobel Prize speech, or was it a speech to the United Nations? I forget. But Mike, great comment, great statement. And what this got me thinking about as a Catholic school administrator is the marshaling of resources and how we need to situate ourselves as Catholic school administrators, Catholic school board members, Catholic school families within the larger ecclesial structure of the parish and the diocese to take an example of COVID verbiage, that we are essential services, that the common good of the Church requires a marshaling of resources that are both spiritual and temporal to the service of the institution of the Catholic school, because the institution is well suited to serve the common good of the Church as a whole. And this is going to look a little bit different in each locale. However, when you think back to the great missionary endeavors of the Church throughout history, especially those of the Franciscans, the Dominicans, the Jesuits, we think of mendicant orders in terms of the prior to, and a religious order that looked very much to the mendicant orders in the Jesuits in terms of dependence upon divine providence and a choice for poverty. That at the same time, while the individual members of those missionary orders were bound by evangelical councils, promises and vows of different kinds, so that they didn't have careers. They weren't career people, so to speak. They were vocational people, which is important for our Catholic schools to recover today. Nevertheless, there has been a massive shift in how Catholic schools function in terms of human resources. And so while the mendicant orders themselves were mendicant, they also marshaled tremendous amounts of financial support from their local communities and from the church in general. The wealth was not theirs personally, but nevertheless it was put at their disposal. And I think that's important for Catholic schools to remember today, and to try to present a narrative and to speak the truth about this, that we are necessary for the common good, and we serve the poverty of fractured families and cheated children, which is one of the greatest poverties of our time. And in order to do that well, we need to have the resources, to have the right people in place to do this. And so this is kind of one of my, I just feel really strongly about this. But we can talk about the vision of Catholic education, which we've been doing, but to apply that means, I think in this particular statement, it means that we need to marshal resources as a church in the service of our schools. So thanks, Mike, for that statement. Emily Lisney's comment was worthy of making a gloss on. She said, but given the statistics that the Pew study shows on the effects of disordered family life on education, it seems not just that it would be nice or helpful or valuable for the home to be the first place of education, but that it is actually built into the nature of things for the parents to be the child's first teachers. That actually, education is very difficult to get off the ground without that basis, because the family is needed simply due to the way reality is ordered to educate a child properly. Yes. This is precisely one of the reasons I wanted you all to have this discussion. Catholic schools cannot replace parents, period. Yet many of our students have fractured homes, which inhibit their learning. What to do? I think that the answer to this question is not one that can be generalized, because Catholic schools are local institutions that need to best serve their local churches. While we talk about principles of Catholic education writ large, those principles need to be applied, and the application in concrete circumstances requires the prudence of the leadership, as well as I'm going to say here shortly, the prudence of the Holy Spirit reflected in counsel. In some cities, this may mean a boarding school. In others, it may call for high-powered curriculum and stringent admission policies that don't try to reach the students who struggle, but rather seek to educate the kids that are best suited to that rigor. For other schools, it may mean that student scores are not through the roof, but that a larger emphasis is placed on social emotional learning, family support, etc. Prudence is necessary in every situation. As Catholic school administrators, teachers, board members, or lay faithful, we cannot let the perfect be the enemy of the good in today's society. There isn't just one model of Catholic school. There are principles that everyone should have, but every Catholic school needs to be responsive to the particular needs and potentialities of their community. Just in Bismarck, this diocese here, I think of Dickinson Trinity out in Dickinson, Light of Christ Catholic Schools in Bismarck, my own Catholic school system here in Minot, Williston's St. Joseph Elementary, the St. Bernard Mission School in Standing Rock, Christ the King School, a St. Joseph School in Mandan. I think that's all of them, I think. But anyway, we all look a lot alike, but we all look very different as well in terms of the concrete realities that each of our school have. And this is pretty homogeneous in comparison to the wide diversity of Catholic schools throughout the country, whether they be Cristo Rey schools in the inner city or so-called elite college prep schools on the coasts, or largely Hispanic schools in the Southwest, or liberal arts based schools that are a composite of homeschool and institutional school. There are a lot of options in what that's going to look like. My point, though, is that we need the gifts of the Holy Spirit to be able to thoughtfully, prayerfully be moved by God to achieve a vision that is His and not necessarily ours, right? So when we talk about these ideals of what a Catholic school ought to be or should be, God is going to bestow His creative wisdom on that particular situation and community if the people in charge, the people making decisions, are praying and are in a state of grace and are actively asking the Holy Spirit to guide the process, which I think, excuse me, is really important. My allergies are horrible. So I thought that was where I could end there with Emily's comment about the necessity of parents and that we can't replace them. Very good, Emily. Thank you for your comment. All of you had, those were just some that I wanted to pick out and comment on myself. But thank you for your discussion. I thought it was very good, and we will continue to push through to the end of the course here with our last couple of modules. So thanks.